I don't know what I'm looking forward to most, preaching about that gospel or the Lions this afternoon. That was a hard loss last week. Holy cow. This is one of those weeks where the readings actually fit very well together. They're all kind of saying to us the same thing. And, at first when I saw the gospel, I thought, I hate this one. I hate preaching on this one, and was sort of dreading it. But then the more I was preparing, the more I realized how all three of the readings really are saying something very beautiful for us this weekend. You maybe are used to this by now, but I focus a lot on the gospel and attempt to allude to the first or second reading, but this is one of those weeks where it'll be all three. So I hope you're planning to be here a while. But our first reading, you could say, is kind of like our origin story. It's when humanity came into existence. And so here God creates all of the world. He creates this man, and he recognizes it's not good that he's alone. So he wants to create a partner for him. We'll recognize first and foremost that none of the animals can fulfill this. They can't be a suitable partner. Why? Because they don't have the same dignity. They don't have the same capacity for love. And they don't have the same capacity for reciprocity and relationship. They can't give of themselves, and they can't receive. And so what does God do? He creates this woman, gives the man and woman to each other, and finally the man says, at last, here's someone I can love, here's someone who's my equal, here's someone that I can have a relationship with. The beautiful aspect of this, though, is the man and woman were made for each other, to give themselves in love for one another. Then we have our second reading. It's kind of like another origin story. Jesus Christ. How Jesus Christ came into our lives. So it's not his origin in the sense that he came to be. Of course, we know that Jesus always was and is. But it's his origin in the sense of his incarnation. That he became one of us. He took on humanity. And so from our second reading, we hear that Christ was made flesh. Why? For us. For us. To give himself in love for us so that we would all be brothers and sisters. And there is the great connection between the first and second reading. The man and woman were made for each other to give themselves for love for the other. Christ was made incarnate to give himself in love for each one of us. And then, of course, we have our gospel. Divorce. Seems to not make any sense with what we've been talking about in our first two readings. And I think if I were to have everybody close their eyes right now and just say, if you know someone or you've experienced divorce in your life, raise your hand, every one of us would. Every one of us would probably raise our hand. Because divorce has affected all of us. It's affected all of us. It's created hurts, it's created wounds. It's something that all of us have been affected by. So why does Jesus bring this up today? Well, I think Christ brings up divorce because of what marriage is supposed to be. Marriage is supposed to be that sign of when a man and woman say to each other, there is nothing you could do that would make me love you less. It's that promise of unconditional love. It's also supposed to be that sign of, there's nothing you can do that would make me leave. It's a promise of always faithful love. And so, Christ is pointing out that when marriages fall apart, they lead us to this place in our own hearts of questioning whether unconditional love and faithful love exist. And if we question that, we might question if God's unconditional love and faithful love exist. And so Jesus is doing something very important. He's reminding us that we are icons of God's love in the world. And in a beautiful way, every married person is an icon of how God's love is faithful and is always faithful and unconditional for each one of us. A profound example of this, how many of you know Kelly Clarkson? Some of you do, yeah? So when she won American Idol, I was 11 years old. How about that? But she's a wonderful songwriter, singer in our country, and she does a great job. And she wrote this song called Piece by Piece. For those who haven't heard it, Piece by Piece is about her experience of divorce. So her parents were divorced when she was 6 years old. Her father left their family and The way she sings about it is it gives the sense that her father's been estranged from the family. And that's the sad part of the story. But the beautiful side of it is she meets this man, gets married, and then she sings these words about her husband. Piece by piece, he collected me off the ground where you abandoned things. Piece by piece, he restored my hope that a man can be kind and a father could stay. That a man could be kind and a father could stay. What I love about that line, that lyric, is this man has restored her hope in unconditional love. This sounds like Christ to me. Christ came to restore our hope in the unconditional love of the Father and the faithful love of the Father. So the great question for us this week is, how are we going to be images, how are we going to imitate Christ to convince other people of the unconditional faithful love of God? Someone recently said to me, that looks like being St. John the Evangelist at the cross. Someone who stays with Jesus all the way to the crucifixion. Someone who stays with Jesus when it's hard. And here's what I mean by hard. I do not mean stay when it's hard when there's abuse. That's a whole other thing. I mean stay when it's hard when we all experience those normal things where we're frustrated with somebody, or we're angry with somebody because we're hurt by something, or just the normal experience of relationships that have those struggles. You all know, we all know this, we experience that. It's part of being human. Stay when it's hard then. It happens in our church, people who are frustrated with bishops, priests, rightly or wrongly, COVID protocols, all these different things. Stay when it's hard. Think about our siblings. One of the things that breaks my heart the most as a priest when I do a funeral and I can tell the siblings don't like each other. Stay when it's hard. Be willing to offer reconciliation and forgiveness. So Christ says those haunting words in our gospel, because of the hardness of your hearts. May our hearts be softened to be like St. John the Evangelist, so that we can be imitators of God's love and help everyone that we come in contact with believe in an unconditionally loving and faithfully loving God.